headlines, sorting through the media bias, exposing the propaganda, and challenging you to use your brain. It's time to tap into the truth.
Yes, that's right, ladies and gentlemen. It is indeed time to tap into the truth. This is your host, Tim Tapp, coming to you live from historic Roane County, Tennessee. Tonight, I want to do something a little bit different. The title of today's broadcast is Ready for the Real World, and that will make more sense to you shortly. I'm not necessarily going to focus on politics today, although there's plenty of things going on. We will hit a couple of news headlines and a brief mention, and then we're going to get to the main topic. On those headlines, what we are talking about starts with something that you need to be aware of for health purposes. They started announcing today that there's been more than 275 people in numerous states that have become very ill with an outbreak that started a couple of weeks ago of some new stomach bug. The U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention has made this announcement, and it was making the headlines all across the country. Seems that most of the patients first become ill with what seems like a foodborne illness. It started in mid-June and has throughout early July. The stomach bug causes diarrhea and other flu-like symptoms. It's been reported primarily in Iowa, Nebraska, Texas, Wisconsin, and Illinois. At least 8 people have been hospitalized, and the investigators are trying to determine the cause of the illness. They haven't made any connections with a specific food item at this point. Various types of fresh produce have been implicated in previous outbreak investigations. No common events, such as social gatherings, have been identified among the patients, and it's not clear if the cases from all of the states are part of the same outbreak. There are possible additional cases that are currently under investigation by the CDC as well. So basically, there's some mystery stomach virus going around. If you've already had it, sorry. If you haven't, be on the lookout. Of course, everyone is also still talking about the train derailment in Spain. The death toll currently sits at 80. Today, the State Department here in the United States announced that there were indeed Americans on board. One of the unfortunate casualties who lost their lives were American, as were at least 5 currently hospitalized. The cause of the accident so far has been hinted at the fact that the train seemed to have been moving a bit too fast for the turn that it was taking, and there's finger pointing in the direction of the driver of the train and a possible failure in the speed control system that's automated. Ultimately, a final cause has not yet been released, but we'll be watching out for that. The big scary news, however, comes from one of the jurors from the George Zimmerman trial, going on national television today and telling her story that she believes that George Zimmerman got away with murder. In fact, she says that she fought for a long time to try and get a conviction. She was the only one that did it, according to her story. She was, of course, the only, quote, minority on the all-female 6-person jury that acquitted Zimmerman. And as it turned out, she spoke out for the first time in an exclusive interview with Robin Roberts for Friday's Good Morning America. But all the information from this interview has basically hit the news service, and it did so early today. Today, of course, being Thursday, July 25th, 2003. Well, 2013. Just went through a time warp, evidently. Sorry about that, folks. At any rate, the 36-year-old mother of 8, who is Puerto Rican, said that she was the juror that fought to the end and was going to give them a hung jury. On the second day of deliberation, she decided under Florida law there was not enough evidence to convict Zimmerman of murder or manslaughter. Okay, so what makes this scary? Well, alright, maybe she genuinely feels this way. But one of two things can be taken from this. Either A, you can say, alright, ma'am, you had your emotional feelings, but you still did the right thing by following Florida law, which is what you're supposed to do when you're on the jury. You're not supposed to go in there and let your preconceived notions and your feelings and your emotions get in the way of enacting justice in accordance to the law. I think it's pretty clear there was not enough evidence for a conviction here. But the downside is, by going on national television, this, more than anything that the Justice Department and the Obama administration has managed to do, may push folks over the top towards creating a heightened level of racial division. This could be the catalyst of creating the type of rioting that Al Sharpton and Jesse Jackson have been pushing for, along with a few other race baiters. They've been trying to make happen. This, playing to the minority card and using the words murder instead of manslaughter, or simply saying felt that he had killed Trayvon and deserved something more than an acquittal. Now, the terminology used there, it's dangerous. The fact that she wants to go out and be seen and make a name for herself, she's probably just trying to, much like the Al Sharptons of the world, trying to make a quick buck over this opportunity, because I guarantee you she'll be writing a book and there will be a movie from her perspective, as well as, the inevitable made-for-television movie that will be coming from this tragedy as it is. And make no mistake, the media is going to eat it up. Why? Because the media is still pushing for gun control, just the same way as the Obama administration is. And any attack they can make against stand your ground, and any attack they can make against you defending yourself in public, they're going to go for it. But at any rate, that's enough of the headlines. I'm going to back up out of that right now. I get involved in a head like that, I want to delve into what's really going on there. And what's really going on there is this chick is probably positioning herself to make a little bit of money, and she's going to allow herself to be used as a useful little idiot by the Obama administration and the mainstream media in their goals and agenda. Their goals and agenda here continue to stir up race issues, continue to widen the divide, and keep you distracted from things that Barack Obama is now, in speeches, going around telling people that they're all made up scandals. Of course, we've heard that these scandals were just fabricated before. For those of us who remember a certain press secretary making an appearance on a certain British-hosted television show. But I digress. Today, I want to get more onto something else. I came across an article today in Forbes magazine, and I spend a little time reading articles like this on a semi-regular basis, but this one kind of stood out to me. This one written by Jason Nazarin, who is a contributor to Forbes, but he's also the founder of DocStock, which is a tech company reasonably successful. If you're not too familiar with it, you can Google him and find out a lot of interesting things. I'm not going to waste your time there, but he wrote an article in the entrepreneur section called 20 Things 20-Year-Olds Don't Get. And reading through it, it kind of got my attention that based on conversations that I've had recently with other members of the management team at the company that I work for my day job, as I like to call it, we were talking about things that people just don't seem to get when they start out looking for jobs. But reading this, it kind of hit home that even the folks who know how to go out, get the interviews, ace the interviews, get the jobs, still seem to be missing some stuff. It was a great article. I recommend you read it. I will put the link to the article in the show description later if you're interested. I think it would certainly be worthwhile if you want to go ahead and read it. I'm going to hit some of the headlines, some of the highlights, and we'll go from there. First of all, basically, he starts out this article talking about how he came by this information and blah, 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 blah. It's worth reading, like I said, but I don't want to give it all away. I don't want to deny you the opportunity to actually read it yourself. But the highlights here, as he goes out and lists the things that the 20-somethings just don't seem to get that are entering the workforce, he starts out with the fact that time is not a limitless commodity. With each one of these, he also gives an explanation for why he feels this way. And again, I'm not going to go into all of these, but a few of them we need to delve into, and we will. But again, I'm going to leave some of this so that you can read it. That's the point. It's a great article. It's well worth reading. But the first thing that he says, 20-somethings just don't get, time is not a limitless commodity. And I think most of us can agree with that. Once we get past the mid-30s, we start to realize as we get more focused on where our job trajectory and our career trajectory should be and where we feel like we should be on it, we realize that we probably haven't taken full advantage of the time that we've had. Why? Mostly because we feel like we've had an abundance of it. When you're young, you feel like you've got all kinds of time. And that's essentially what he gets into there. Second thing, you're talented, but talent is overrated. And he makes a great point because guess what? There are literally thousands of talented people in every single field you can imagine who will never get an opportunity to shine. And it's not even necessarily because of a lack of effort and not necessarily because of a lack of doing the right thing. Sometimes you're just never in the right place at the right time to get noticed by the right people. So the advice here is don't sit back and rest on your laurels. Don't think it's good enough just to be talented at something, because it's not. I personally know a truckload of people who've devoted a great deal of their time to working in the music industry. Extremely talented people. But I guarantee you, you have never heard of them. And the reason why you haven't is because being talented just isn't enough. Now, in truth, some of you may have heard of a few of them. They're not all folks that have made no claim to fame. In fact, a couple of my friends have done significant recordings and have made a name for themselves. But that's beside the point. He states simply, one of the things they don't get, we're more productive in the mornings. He goes on to talk about when he was first starting his current company, that he prided himself, excuse me, sorry, yawning. I should not do that. Very unprofessional. I apologize. But he started out saying that during his first 2 years, when he started Doc Stock, that he prided himself on staying in the office until 3 in the morning on a regular basis. And that after a while he realized that while he got the more menial tasks done, that the real meat and potatoes, the strategy, the planning, the phone calls, the meetings, everything that needed to happen to make business happen, still had to happen during regular business hours. And most people, even the ones who aren't morning people, still tend to be more productive, and teams tend to be more productive in the early hours of the day. Basically, once you get past lunchtime, things just don't get done as well. He points out something that a lot of the 20-somethings really don't get, especially since these positions are new and exclusive to this age group, it seems like. Social media is not a career. A lot of job titles are out there right now that are specifically tied to social media. And he puts a specific time of another 5 years from now, these job titles won't exist. Points out that the social media is merely a means to help improve branding and awareness, and that's its strength and its trajectory within the business world at the moment. And it makes sense. I don't see social media not being a factor for businesses from here on out, as long as technology exists the way it does. But maybe it won't play as much of a role. Maybe the role will diverse and a more traditional form of advertising will come back into favor. Or maybe the next big thing that precludes and skips past social media becomes the holy grail of advertising and branding. At any rate, I don't think 5 years is a real number. I think that's probably hyperbole, but the point is still the same, and it's a legitimate point. Again, I like the article. You have to read it. Next thing, pick up the phone. Stop hiding behind your computer. Business gets done either face-to-face, in person, or over the phone. You want to talk to somebody to make things happen, not hiding behind a computer desk, not sending a text. People want to hear your voice. People want to see your face. Be the first in and the last to leave. That's something that, unfortunately, most of us in management positions are all too familiar with. We have to do that quite a bit in order to make sure that we get extra stuff accomplished to make the job easier, not just for ourselves, but for our employees. Most employees never see that side of what happens for management and our efforts to try and make things easier for them. But I guarantee you, in any business that's successful, it's not about making your employees work harder. It's about making your employees work smarter so you can optimize the use. You want to make things easier for them to get done what needs to be done so that it then in turn accomplishes more in the same amount of time. Management does value time. Their time, your time, and the money that's spent because of that time. So by being the first one in and the last one to leave, that's not exactly new advice. That's advice that could have been handed out by somebody who was just starting a paper route in the 1930s. The point is, if you're the early bird in and you're staying and showing you're dedicated, then you're going to have the opportunity. And when you're new to a job, when you're the new guy there, no matter how you feel about your education, no matter how confident you feel about who you are and how good you're going to be, when you're new there, you still have something to prove. So get in there and get it done. Don't wait to be told what to do. Now, this doesn't mean just jumping in and doing a bunch of stuff because whatever, but bottom line is, if you see something that needs to be done, then do it. And that's great advice, whether you're working in an office trying to put together a project or a proposal, or if you're working janitorial services and you're supposed to be buffing the floor and you see something that needs to be swept up, and you're just going to keep buffing and ignore what needs to be swept, you're going to have a bigger mess. Don't wait for somebody to tell you to do it, or you're never going to have an opportunity to show that you are capable of moving to the next level. Next thing he says is to take responsibility for your mistakes, and that is also great advice. Points out that when you're young and still early in your career, that you not only will make mistakes, but that you should be making mistakes. He even goes so far as to say that it should be lots of mistakes. Hopefully not so much, but you understand the point. You shouldn't be defensive about your errors in judgment or errors in execution, however. Stop trying to justify when you mess up, and understand that these are the opportunities you have. That's part of your learning curve. Again, great advice. You should be getting your butt kicked. I don't know if that's necessarily the case, but it goes on to point out The Devil Wears Prada as an example of working for the character that Meryl Streep played. Be a very valuable boss, because you're not going to do any better than when you're constantly pushed to your limits by a boss that demands professional excellence. Then, next up, a new job. A year isn't a good thing. Bottom line, stop jumping around. If you got a resume where you're changing jobs every year, you can't sit back and use an excuse that, oh, well, I'm just so talented that I outgrew the company that quickly. Basically, it means you don't have the discipline to finish out picking up the skills that you can learn from that position. At this point, he points out that it takes about 2 to 3 years to master any new critical skill. So give yourself at least that much time before you jump ship. Otherwise, your resume reads as a series of red flags on why not to be hired. It was at that point I read that red flags on why not to be hired that I got to again thinking about the conversation that I'd had with the other members of our management team at our food manufacturing company that I work for. I'll get back to that momentarily, though. People matter more than perks. It's really trendy these days to decide to work for a company that offers flex time, unlimited meals, company massages, game rooms, team outings. And, nothing wrong with keeping that stuff in mind. But it's not as important as the character of the founders and the managers that run the company. Great leaders will mentor you and will be a loyal source of employment long after you've left. Make a conscious bet on the folks you're going to work for, and your commitment to them will pay off much more than those fluffy perks. Map effort to your professional gain. You're going to be asked to do things you don't like to do, so you keep an eye on the prize. Connect with what you're doing today with where you want to be tomorrow. That should be all the incentive you need. If you can't map your future success to your current responsibilities, then it's time to find new opportunities. Next thing that our author says is to speak up, not out. Well, what's that mean? Right now, these kids that you see coming up now, the 20-somethings and younger, they like to talk trash. And Trash talking and calling people out quietly outside of reasonable ways of communication is a cancer in any workplace. It says that if you have issues with management, culture, or your role and responsibilities, then speak up. Don't take those complaints and trash talk the company or coworkers on lunch breaks or on anonymous chat boards. If you can effectively communicate what needs to be improved, you have the ability to shape your surroundings and your professional destiny. You have to build your technical chops. Basically, he just says at this point, adding proficient in Microsoft Office at the bottom of your resume under skills is not going to cut it anymore. He says that he immediately gives preference to candidates who are ninjas in Photoshop, HTML, CSS, iOS, WordPress, AdWords, MySQL, Advanced Excel, Final Cut Pro, regardless of what the job position is. He steps up and says that if you plan to stay gainfully employed, you better complement that humanities degree with some applicable technical chops. Then he says, next up, both the size and quality of your network matters. It's not enough to just be social media networking. Make sure you know who you're networking with. Keep the group as large as you can. Why? Because there's one thing in business and politics that remains the same. It's who you know more than what you know that gets you ahead in business. Knowing a small group of folks very well or a huge smattering of contacts superficially, that's just not going to cut it anymore. Meet and stay connected to lots of folks and invest your time developing as many of those relationships as possible. You need at least 3 professional mentors. The most guaranteed path to success is to emulate those who have achieved what you seek. You should always have at least 3 people you call mentors who are where you want to be. Their free guidance and counsel will be the most priceless gift you can receive. Not done yet. Pick an idol and act as if. You may not know what to do, but your professional idol does. At this point, he says that he often coaches his employees to pick the business person they most admire and act as if you were whoever. How would he or she carry themselves? How would he or she make decisions, organize their day, accomplish goals? You've got to fake it until you make it. So it's better to fake it as the most accomplished person you can imagine. Next up, read more books, less tweets and text. The generation currently of the 20-somethings and below consumes information in headlines and 140 characters. All breadth and no depth. Creativity, thoughtfulness, and thinking skills are freed when you're forced to read a full book cover to cover. All the keys to your future success lay in the past experiences of others. Make sure to read a book a month, fiction or nonfiction, and your career will blossom. Spend 25% less than you make. Again, this is great advice no matter what decade you're from. When your material needs meet or exceed your income, you're sabotaging your ability to really make it big. Don't shackle yourself with golden handcuffs. A fancy car or an expensive apartment, if you can't afford it, they don't do you any good. Be willing and able to take 20% less in the short term if it could mean 200% more earning potential later. You're nothing more than penny wise and pound foolish if you pass up an amazing new career opportunity to keep an extra little bit of income. No matter how much money you make, spend 25% less to support your life. It's a guaranteed formula to be less stressed and always have the flexibility to pursue your dreams. Your reputation is priceless. Don't damage it. This is probably the biggest piece of advice from the whole thing. Over time, your reputation is the most valuable currency you have in business. And not just in business, I'm going to add right there. It's the invisible key that either opens or locks shut doors of professional opportunity and other opportunities as well. Especially in an age where everything is forever recorded and accessible, your reputation has to be guarded like the most sacred treasure. It's the one item that once lost, you can never get back. Well, that was the article. In a nutshell, we've hit all the highlights. There's still more to read, and I highly recommend it. It's worth the read. But that hits all the important things, and there is a tremendous amount of very good advice throughout it. But what occurred to me reading that is a lot of that still hits right back on some of the things that we were discussing with the management team. We're going to take a quick break, and once that break is over, we're going to come right back, and we're going to hit the topic of exactly what it is I'm talking about as far as what these kids need to know today before they leave high school, and it's just not getting taught anymore. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Tap into the truth. Check us out at tapintothetruth.com for our latest blog posts and for links to all of our past broadcasts. Don't forget to like us on Facebook and to follow us on Twitter. That's Tap Into the Truth right here on Spreaker Radio.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are back, and thank you for staying with us. That's Tap Into the Truth. Check us out on the internet, the web, worldwide, at tapintothetruth.com, where we have a variety of thoughts, musings, videos, blog posts, past broadcasts that you can easily access from both here and our blog talk show as well. And we also have a page that is dedicated specifically to friends of the show and sponsors. However, at the moment, we're a little light on sponsors. Also, while we're on the topic, a lot of people that come into contact with the show are activists themselves. And for those who are, if you happen to be involved with the project and you would like to be a guest on our blog talk version of the show, feel free to send me a message and let me know. We'll see if we can make something happen for you. Always looking for interesting guests with interesting things to say. The last 10 minutes of the show, let's get to the meat and potatoes. the whole purpose of education, public, private, or otherwise, especially elementary and secondary education, is to try to get you ready to become independent, to try to get you ready to be in the real world. Now, for those of you who are fortunate enough to get to pursue post-secondary education, whether through vocational training, technical schools, or, hey, great for you, college, you've still got some time deferred before you have to hit that. But unfortunately, in America, not everybody is headed to college. Some because they can't afford it, and some flat out, let's face it, just aren't college material. In fact, we see people every year, if you bother to spend some time and go take a look, see people that actually attend smaller colleges and community colleges and other such institutions that really just don't have any business being there. Sometimes these people spend an entire year taking remedial courses before they finally give up and drop out. Spending money. The school gets their money, whether it's through grants or scholarships or whatever form of financial assistance they manage to acquire, or straight out of their pockets if they were working through it. And they get that, and the person gets nothing in return, because if you spend all your time in remedial classes, you're not even earning time or credits towards a degree. You're just showing the college that, okay, you're ready to start taking college courses. First and foremost, if you have to be in remedial classes, well, let me rephrase this. If you have to be in more than 2 remedial classes coming in as a freshman, then you're probably not college material. Or your school that you attended has done a horrible job on your behalf. There are bad schools that still have kids ready and prepped to go to college. You're talking about a really bad school if you are indeed college material and you still have to take more than 2 remedial classes. Now, I can understand if you're not strong in a particular subject. If you're really, really strong and focused on what your field of study is going to be, and maybe, let's say that you're focused on science. You're really good at math and science classes, blah, blah, blah. Maybe you're not so strong on English. Okay, so if you need a remedial there, no big whoop. That doesn't mean you're not college material. It just means that's something you got to figure out how to work on and get better at. I'll give you that. But then there are the rest of these kids that are coming out of high schools with no idea about how to go get a job. And that's what they're going to have to go do. You can't have a 20-something walking in to a business establishment expecting to be able to get a job when they don't have the first clue how to behave or how to go about it. And what makes it worse is some of these kids are getting bad advice from people that aren't doing any better. Now, I'm going to go over some examples that I've had to deal with just recently, as I primarily do the hiring, the company that I work for. But we sit back and we see these people come in. First thing that you need to know if you are a potential employee that you're out here looking, if you haven't had the college background, if you haven't had the classes, if you haven't had a course on how to write a resume or how to make a good first impression, is keep in mind that even if you're just stopping by to pick up an application, you're making an impression then. That's your first chance to make one. Don't come in dirty. Don't come in looking like you just rolled up out of bed. Don't come in looking like you just rolled up out from underneath a car. Don't come in with obscene or offensive tattoos showing. Don't come in thinking that It's the same as just hanging out with your buddies and pals. You don't necessarily have to be dressed to the nines, but you sure as heck better be dressed at least business casual, so that you make the point that you're sending the message to your potential employer that you're serious about wanting to work. That's step one. That's the basic thing. And then when you engage with whoever's bringing you your application, keep in mind that you're making an impression then too. So put your best foot forward, but don't be pushy. Don't be timid, but don't be pushy. Either one of those is going to cost you potential points when it comes time to call you for an interview. And for heaven's sakes, if you get called back for an interview, the rules we just went over about your appearance, they multiply. Because whether you like it or not, an employer is going to make decisions based on how you look and how you talk to them. This is important information for you to be ready for the real world, ladies and gentlemen. I know most of my listeners, most of the people that are going to be listening to this, they are well past the early stages of their career. They know how to ace interviews. They know how to write resumes. But I mention this because I'm telling you, right now, it has been tragic, the people I have seen in this past 12-month period who have come in looking for work. It's been absolutely tragic because some of them I know would probably have been great workers, would have come in and busted their chops, would have tried very hard to give us everything we needed. But because we work in food and cleanliness is an issue, if you come in dirty looking, we're not going to be able to help you. Don't come in to pick up an application wearing T-shirts and shorts. That doesn't demonstrate that you're serious. And if you're looking, by the way, to possibly get a job for a quick service restaurant, never ask for an application through the drive-thru. Trust me. The only way you're ever going to get an opportunity for an interview, if you do that, is if they just flat out run out of applications. And in the current state of the economy, that's not likely to happen. But here's the real point. This is basic information. Most of the folks that are listening, I'm sure, get it. And if you are somebody that can benefit from hearing that, then I hope you'll take it to heart. But I mention this stuff because I want to reach out to those of you out there who can help do something about it. And guess what? That's any of you that has hiring experience. The time has come. Our public school system is not getting the job done. And it's not necessarily their fault. There are a lot of great teachers out there that are doing the best they can with what they have. Now, there's also a lot of indoctrination going on out there, too, and some extremely left-leaning liberals, so-called progressives, that are out of their mind, and they want these people to be government-dependent. They don't want them able to get a job. But in either case, it's not acceptable. We've got to find ways of outreach. So let me challenge you right now. If you are a successful entrepreneur, if you are a successful educator, if you are somebody who can help these kids learn some skills, then start a class. Reach out, utilize your local church, utilize some other facility if you have the means. But we've got to get something started to start helping these kids so that they'll know what to do when it comes time for them to be in the real world. I mention this because I'm actually thinking of doing the exact same thing. I'm going to organize some classes here locally, and I want to challenge everybody out there to do the same thing. And anyone interested in helping along those lines, feel free to send me a message because I can use it. We're in the last 20 seconds of the show, so I guess that's it for tonight, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for listening. Hope you found it entertaining. Hope you found it educational. And as always, remember, don't take my word for it. Definitely definitely don't take their word for it. Take your time, do your own research, use your brain. You've got to be willing to dig a little to get to the truth. So always tap into the truth. At any rate, good night, everybody. Thanks for listening. Don't forget, you can also find us on iTunes. Have a great night, everybody.